Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's pretty late on Sunday.
Oh my gosh, I'm so tired.
Yeah. You
Good.
grinded it out this week.
Community day. Oh yeah, the week. Not a long week.
Yeah, the teaching evaluation for yourself and a couple other things. Winston,
Yes, please.
he does. He does.
Poor little boy.
We think they're coming in from outside, but we're doing all our preventative stuff that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had community day today.
Yeah.
Yes. How was that for you?
It was good. The start time got messed up.
Yeah.
It was chaotic at the beginning. But we played the whole time until 2.
We did. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
It was a lot.
You've been working on your recap video.
Yeah, I'm editing right now, so
Yeah.
taking
Maybe
a break to
tomorrow
do the
or something.
podcast.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll get the podcast out and at least edited, maybe out later.
Mm-hmm.
What's the week look like? The regular?
Yeah, I have another evaluation.
Yeah,
I have
back to back. Well, it's kinda
doctor's
weird.
appointment, meetings, all of that's on Tuesday.
Yeah, you're loaded up on Tuesday.
Whoops.
I'm not too busy until Thursday, but yeah. Cool. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, Juan's ready. Everyone should turn to page 215. Nicolas Flamel. Today's lesson is called Quick Conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
A simple title, but it fits. It's nighttime and somebody's revving their engine. Okay, a synopsis. The chapter starts with Harry extra nervous about his next Quidditch match because he has learned Snape will be refereeing. After consoling Neville with a chocolate frog, after his latest bout of bullying from Malfoy, Harry notices the name Nicolas Flamel in the text on Dumbledore's card. The trio discover that Flamel is the only known creator of the Sorcerer's Stone, a mysterious and powerful object known to prolong life. Harry learns that Dumbledore is attending the Quidditch match, and his fears that Snape will attack him subside completely. In his relief, he catches the snitch exceptionally fast. After the match, he follows Snape into the Forbidden Forest on his broomstick and overhears a discussion between Snape and Professor Quirrel about the Sorcerer's Stone and its protection inside the castle. Very brief synopsis.
Nice. So I didn't realize, so you're calling this quick conclusions.
I am.
That it also connects to the Quidditch match.
Yeah,
That
that
it
was my
ends
thinking.
really quickly.
I think she does that a lot, right? It's been something that I think about in my own writing where if I want scenes or even chapters to kind of read almost like episodic television where there's this theme and it kind of cuts through it. Because there's an obvious theme and like the stage of the progression of the mystery here of the Sorcerer's Stone where Harry and the rest are quick to jump to conclusions every time they get a new piece of information. Today is about Nicolas Flamel. They kind of just jump to the conclusion that like basically Snape is after it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think J.K. Rowling is writing the Quidditch match to end fast in that same way. The other thing that I was thinking about was Neville coming to a conclusion about himself so quickly. Right? I mean, it's not that quick for him, but he's already decided that like the Sorting Hat has made a mistake and he is not a Gryffindor.
Yeah, Neville really stood out to me in this chapter. I think that, well, I mean, you could say that for all of them. So like Malfoy, his Draco's thing is like, he's just so mean. He's so mean to everyone. And he's like, it's actually kind of, he's not creative about it. He says the same thing over and over. He's like, oh, Ron, you're poor. Harry, you have no parents.
Yeah, there's that one. Yeah, we'll get into it, but it reminds me that it happens in the other scene. I know I said in the past one that I thought it was the only scene, but it's not. We have equivalently another Quidditch scene where Harry is up in the air, and he's actually not partaking in this part of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
With Draco, yeah, basically laundry listing his old favorite insults.
Yeah.
Does he say like Hermione is a Muggle-born or something? I don't even know.
No, he was only picking on those
Oh, okay.
Neville saying that he was dumb.
Yeah.
But
and then Neville fights Crabbe and Goyle.
Well, yeah.
Gets knocked out.
He tries.
Yeah.
Ron is like the one that's like quick to just jump on the situation. So what I loved about the exchange with, so like part of the search for Nicolas Flamel, which we're going to have to do like a whole deep dive on the Philosopher's Stone.
Mm-hmm.
And because Nicolas Flamel is a real person.
Mm-hmm. That
comes up in several fantasy or fiction type stories.
Yes, he does.
And there's just too much information to get into for this specific chapter, just because we only see his name in the mention, and that supposedly he's like 665 years old.
Yeah, maybe somebody we could get into in the book wrap.
Yeah,
when we talk about the whole book.
Summary.
Yeah,
for sure. And we'll have more content to go off of with
Fantastic Beasts.
Well, the Sorcerer's Stone and the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah.
Just the concept of it. But just how it kind of goes back to, and it's actually in the earlier on pages 102 and 103, that's where Harry first sees the Dumbledore card and reads it out loud. And so we had already seen this information.
And J.K. Rowling even sprinkles it in where Harry's like, because it happens in this chapter, but I think it happens like before, where he's like, I swear I've read his name somewhere, you know?
Mm-hmm. And why would Harry who knows nothing, like it has to be something very specific. And what I loved about the whole thing, though, is that so they find this out because Harry gives Neville his last chocolate frog, who he got as a gift from Hermione for Christmas. So gives it to Neville because Neville's all sad and he's like trying to cheer him up and like pep talk and be like, you're worth 12 of Malfoy, which is what he says. He says it. He's so
I'm
sweet.
Worth 12 of you.
Oh,
yeah.
Neville. And so he does that. And so like all of that happens and Neville's like, oh, here, you want the card? And then it's just like right in your hand. And that's when Hermione, who also like, yes, she's part of the chocolate frog thing, but then she pulls it together and is like, oh, okay, he's the maker of the Sorcerer's Stone.
She runs off and gets that book. Yeah.
And it just like all comes together and it's like all of them are involved. It's really nice.
It's a very similar scene in some way to something much later in book 7 when Harry finds out the mysterious identity of R.A.B. and he has this time where he like reads it and he's kind of like, in this one she doesn't milk it in the same way in terms of like, I think when in that book he in that scene he has like this wash over him and he doesn't even quite recognize why. This is much faster because they've already been looking for Nicolas Flamel, so the name is just like pops at him. But it's kind of funny in that way because it's similar where like he reads something and then like he's like, I found him, you know. But it's kind of it's accidental. It's like you said, like it's just Neville reciprocating this kind act from Harry and like just is serendipitous, you know. I mean, this guy is famous enough. Eventually, they would have found him. But I like how it's a tight plot device. It makes sense that they wouldn't be looking at the right thing. Like they're just like when Hagrid says it's between Dumbledore and Nicolas Flamel, they just assume like he's a modern day wizard. Like let's look in modern day wizards, and if he like has association with Dumbledore, we'll certainly find him. I suspect that, I guess now that I'm saying how tight the plot device is, if they would have read a biography of Dumbledore, who they know is associated with Nicolas Flamel, I imagine they would have came across it, but that's all right. It's still really a great, it's such a clever way to have it. They're like researching him and they're not necessarily making a lot of mistakes in the research, but why would they look at somebody from the 14th century, you know? It's pretty fun. I've always really liked how the mystery kind of unfolds in this book. It's not a particularly like dangerous or mysterious mystery. It's just like somebody's identity. And then the Sorcerer's Stone becomes a bit more mysterious, but yeah. Then we have Snape. Snape and Quirrel. Yeah.
Well, so before that, so like Harry's going to the Quidditch match and it's like all nervous. And I was reading kind of fast earlier today, but then when I was taking it a little slower, looking for some quotes that stood out to me. So like Ron and Hermione bring their wands to the stands, and Neville's all like, okay, like, sure. I don't know why you brought your wands, but sit by me, I guess.
Ron's got it up his sleeve.
and they had been practicing the leg lock and curse, and just they're ready to take down Snape or
just
whoever
up in front of everyone.
Yeah. Just like let's
they gotta
do
save
it.
their friend, you know.
Yeah.
Consequences be damned.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes, it's just kind of a goofy quote, is like, because it doesn't quite fit for me for Hermione's, but she's quite young still, and she says, "Just as long as we're not wiping you off the field," or whatever.
Poor Harry.
Cracks me up.
Yeah. So, well, actually, so one of my quotes kind of leads into the Snape Quirrel thing. So it's when, after winning the match, Harry is going to put his Nimbus 2000 back in the broom shed.
Yeah.
And so he like leaves the locker room, and the dialogue or his thoughts are, he couldn't ever remember feeling happier. He'd really done something to be proud of now. No one could say he was just a famous name anymore. Did you write that down?
Oh my
gosh. Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's what do you think about that quote?
Well, I mean, this is something that Harry's been dealing with, obviously. Like, we've seen this for the entire time that he's been, he's found out who he was or who he's supposed to be. This, like, I don't know, who's the real Harry Potter, this mysterious legend of Harry Potter. And I don't know, it also makes sense why he's kind of like always nervous and so intense about, like, Quidditch is the thing that, like, even though he just magically, or, you know, seems to be just good at it, that he's like, okay, I can prove myself. And there's a lot of proving that's happening. So you have Neville blatantly saying, oh, you know, you don't have to tell me that I'm not brave enough to be in Gryffindor. He actually vocalizes it out loud, and it kind of, it seems like it's also the way that it's written. It said that he like choked it out. Like, it's hard for him to like even say it. And so like putting that out there, and yeah,
there's a certain bravery in Neville even vocalizing it, right? Harry doesn't vocalize his baggage here. But I agree. I mean, I think it's Harry. I like you said legend, and I was thinking myth similarly. Like, Harry Potter, up until this point, is a different person than Harry Potter, the character we're following around. It's this mythical wizard thing. The true Harry hasn't been able to craft himself an identity yet separate from that. He's always overshadowed by, you know, some myth of himself. Yeah, his name, exactly. And so I really appreciated that internal dialogue, that moment. It's something that's been a throwaway for me for so long. I don't know that I ever even remembered that line particularly. And this time around, I was like, yeah. What an intense moment that really was for Harry, you know?
Well, we don't really see much of what happens in the classrooms or around schoolwork. I mean, but I also don't imagine that Harry is like, well, we know he's not excelling in potions class. You know, it's not, or that he thinks that Snape is out to get him. And so like Hermione has that going for her as like, okay, she at least gets validation because she does well and she like knows things, or she's like quick to respond to what happens in classroom settings or whatever.
Yeah,
so
it happens
what else
pretty
does Harry
quick,
have?
right?
Yeah.
Where whatever insecurities that might have been born out of for Hermione, she is relatively quick to craft an identity separate from being a Muggleborn. She's the best in the year, right? Everyone knows it, apparently. You know, even Malfoy, right? To kind of acknowledges it after enough time. Maybe not until the second book, really, but yeah.
Yeah.
And Ron.
Well, because I'm thinking now of like, well, he has the wizard chess thing, but
yeah,
I'm trying to think of, so part of it is, so you're talking about crafting an identity. It's like you being the center of your story rather than being a sidekick or being like complementary to someone else who is like the person that does anything, really.
It just occurred to me when I was thinking about Ron. Yeah. Is it's possible. We know it should be true for Harry, but it's probably also true for Ron and maybe Hermione. These might be their first two friends, like really ever. Right? Hermione, if we want to build out her backstory, like often know-it-alls struggle to connect with people who would, you know, kind of judge them for such a thing, despite it just being, you know, an exhibition of their knowledge. And Ron, probably his family is so big that it might not have ever really occurred to them to think about like making friends before the school, because they just can do things with the family. I don't know. It was just something that occurred to me. I wonder if like, well, I know it to be true for Harry, and like we feel that like, oh my gosh, he has friends, like this is so wonderful for him, but it feels like it might be true for them and maybe Neville too.
So as Harry is having this internal dialogue, that's like when he stumbles upon Snape and Quirrell having some discussion.
Yeah, he follows them flying in the air.
Yeah, he's just cracks like, okay,
me up. Yeah,
let's go over here.
I just imagine some kind of like jokey comedy, like a cartoon where Snape's like flies over here and flies over here. Yeah. What did you? I mean, as the closer of the chapter goes, it's a bit of confirmation bias for Harry. Like, oh, Snape knows about it, so he knows about the stone, and he's pressuring Quirrell. He knows what Fluffy is guarding. He's trying to get by him, so like we just more evidence. And he jumps to a relatively quick conclusion. I mean, I tried to be more sympathetic to his position. Like, is it really reasonable to expect Harry to like step back and be like, no, this guy who like abuses me is actually like doing something else? I mean, it is conceivable to me that like it's not up to Harry. Like, it's not unreasonable for Harry to be like, no, this guy is messing around here.
Yeah, so when I was rereading, what stood out to me was possibly a parallel between Snape and Quirrell and Draco and Neville. So Quirrell being this like stammering, like meek, and the only reason I thought that was because Hermione, or I can't remember if it was Hermione or Ron, but I think Hermione says, oh, so the stone is safe as long as Quirrell can stand up to Snape or something like that. And that's when Ron's like, oh, it'll be gone by next Tuesday. And so I thought, well, maybe then you can have Draco come in and out, but like, is there an intentionality of having that dynamic happen in this chapter and not in another chapter? I mean, it does happen in other chapters, but like in this chapter specifically, you have Draco and he's kind of like picking on Neville, and Neville's like, he's just like, and like trying to, like, I could envision him as like a little stammering, blubbering little dude that's like trying to, but failing to stand up to this bully. And then from their perspective, our trio sees Quirrell possibly in a similar way, because their interactions with Snape are very similar to how Draco interacts with other people, like just very targeted and clearly biased, both Slytherin, like it just fits. I don't know. I mean, knowing nothing else about Quirrell, but
as a budding writer, I love doing this with you, not only for myself, but doing it with you, because it's, what you're saying to me just speaks to her writing. It's purposeful. I mean, it is. She's a queen. She is the queen of parallels. Like, and it's very subconscious, right? We are trying to make the connection, but in other times I haven't tried to make the connection. I'm just enjoying page after page without really worrying about what's in one chapter or not. And it's she is setting us up. She's setting us up on so many different fronts to be like, who are these people and what are their options, you know? And it is totally a parallel, and the conclusion will be quite different for the two scenarios, Snape and Quirrell, and Neville and Malfoy, and just Neville and Quirrell, right? And what they do in the face of bullying and what is even going on is just so different. It's pretty phenomenal. But in this chapter, I'm with you. Like, that is exactly what she's doing. she's saying like, you know, pinning it on Quirrel is the same as pinning your hope on Neville. Like and Neville just admitted to everyone he's not brave. Neville himself said it, you know. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. We are really cruising along. This is chapter 13.
Oh, yeah.
And it started in the 200s, and we are very close to ending the book here. And I'm quite excited. I'm really excited to, you know, I feel like to graduate in a few episodes to be able to talk about the book holistically, and then start a second book where the tone does shift and you know, we're a year into it, and so is Harry, and it's going to be great. But I'm really, really looking forward to talking about the end of this book.
Yes.
I think it's, for whatever reason, this book is amazingly written, but it's never one that I've spent too much time thinking about until we started thinking about this podcast. And we had a bunch of different ideas. And now I'm like so enamored with it, and I'm just so excited about, you know, what's going on in the book and what it could all mean from like a critique point of view. How are you doing with things?
Yeah, I have one more quote, which might be, I mean, it's about the Philosopher's Stone again. So and I said this to you earlier today, it's Harry where he's like, they find out about it and what it is, and he's like, a stone that makes gold and stops you from ever dying? No wonder Snape's after it. Anyone would want it. And the reason why it stands out to me, well, it's two things. It's one, it's like, okay, clearly he's 11. Because, I mean, we've talked about life and death a lot, and it's just kind of, and I had a similar moment with my students where we do these like questions of the day, like, would you rather be transported 500 years in the past or 500 years in the future? And like, I don't know, it's just playful. And people are talking about, oh, well, if you went into the future, like modern medicine or whatever, just like the idea of like, maybe you could live longer. And it's kind of like, well, why would you want that? And that's a very complicated question. Or just the idea of eternal life. Going back to Black Mirror, San Junipero, like, would you just want to, or at least your consciousness to live on forever outside of yourself? Like those sorts of questions, whether or not it's actually attainable, but the idea of what it means to live and what it means to die, and especially how we know how the story goes. And I don't know, I just think it's a good quote to contrast perhaps when we get into the later books. And
yeah, when you said that, I immediately thought of the last book and like the whole premise of it, and how much Harry will have evolved in his thinking between now and then. And he gains, like, in my opinion, a pretty awesome perspective and wise perspective when all is said and done. That right now, you're right, he just is he's just embodying sort of the very casual quantitative idea of like, oh, living longer is better. And I gotta be honest with you, living 600 years sounds freaking awful. Oh my gosh. Bless Jenna Marbles.
Well, it made me laugh also that he's 600, or he's listed as 665 years old. One more year. Yeah, just silly things like that.
And maybe this can be the note that we ended on, but as we were talking up this chapter and starting it up, I believe you told me that, did you tell me this or did I read it? That they changed the title for the U.S. to Sorcerer's Stone instead of Philosopher's Stone because there was a fear that Philosopher's Stone would be rejected as too intellectual. Maybe I just read that.
No,
for U.S. kid markets.
I feel like someone said this to us out loud, but it was not me.
Yeah. It just cracks me up.
Well, yeah, why would we read anything about philosophy?
Right. Even in this
that's not
nice
allowed
young
in
adult
schools.
Rapper. Yeah, right.
Well, this isn't even allowed in schools, so whatever.
Oh my God. That cracks me up.
People.
Yeah, I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, everyone, until next time, wands ready.